Hi guys, it's Mariel Gardiner here again with interviews from Accepting Therapy LLC. And today I'm joined by Saba Aqel. We're here to get to know her a little bit better as a therapist at our practice and one of my friends and colleagues. So thank you for joining us, Saba. I'm so excited to get to talk to you a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, let's jump right in. One question that I like to ask everyone that I speak to is kind of about your journey and what inspired you to get involved in mental health.
Mm. So what brought me to this field is actually I was in my own therapy for a while, but that's what really like sparked my interest in this field specifically in counseling. Before then, I had always had a curiosity and a like high interest in psychology since I could remember. I majored in psychology in undergrad. I took psychology classes, like advanced psychology in high school.
Sure.
So I was always very curious and I put in the effort in the field, just out of this interest in what makes us behave the way we do, what do feelings mean, what do we do with them, what is mental illness, how does it impact us. And I also saw it a lot around me. I grew up in Palestine, and it's occupied, and there's a lot of trauma where I grew up, and so you see it in everyone around you, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Living under occupation for some people most of their life, most people. And so it always made me ask those curious questions. And so um I also saw it in my people close to me, especially the trauma piece. And so um and I struggled with trauma myself, so I was diagnosed with PTSD, and that's why I went to therapy. um so having navigating that was very life changing for me, and it led me to this very specific career. So yeah, then I started school, and here I am.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's an amazing journey, and thank you so much for being so open and honest about it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have our own, personal journeys with psychology and therapy, and then also that natural kind of inclination to get into the study of it. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question I would love to ask you is, how does cultural humility show up in your practice? How do you utilize that?
Mhm. For me, cultural humility is about go walking into our room, creating a safe space, a non-judgmental space, and allowing not only yourself to give the client psychoeducation, but to also allow the client to show you, to teach you. Like, I could have a client walk in who is also a Palestinian American immigrant, who grew up very similarly to me, had very similar experiences, and was raised the same way, but she will still present differently.
Sure.
And I cannot sit there as her therapist and assume to know all of her experiences and how her culture and other identities painted her journey. So
Mhm.
cultural humility to me is sometimes taking the backseat and allowing the client to explain to me, and in doing so, that allows them to write their own narrative.
Sure.
So it's about not jumping to conclusions, not assuming to know the client, even
Yeah,
though you're from similar cultures. And if we're not from similar cultures, it's being very open to learning, and taking a very, very sort of vulnerable and humble approach in building that relationship that is going to be healing. And I think it needs a lot of that cultural humility in order to do so.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the way you put that. And I think remembering that the client teaches us,
Yeah.
I think sometimes even more than we can impart anything on them,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
allowing all of those identities to show up in a way that's, authentic for them and safe,
Mhm.
and really
Mhm.
meeting the client where they're at. I think it's very important.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. And to add to that, like, we learn so much from our clients.
Yeah.
And I'm always so grateful for those moments. I
Sure.
don't know if clients know that, but you teach us stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we always share that, but
No, I don't think we do enough, but
yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of normalizing and kind of leveling the playing field a little bit with clients too. Like, we are not the experts in your life, and
yes.
we have degrees, sure, but we're
Mm.
still human beings getting to
Right.
know you. So
Right. It's really reframing that narrative of what therapy and has been historically. It's
absolutely.
like you walk into the room and I tell you what you're
Mhm.
thinking. I analyze you. I give you assessments, and bam, here's what you have. Here's how to treat it. But the way we approach it is it's all based on that therapeutic relationship that you build.
Mhm.
That is really where all the gold is and where all the healing can happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is like down the road we're going to touch on this, but for clients who are looking to start therapy with someone, like, make sure that relationship feels right and authentic to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely paying attention to that kind of power dynamic, because there really should not be one, or if there is, we need to address it and kind of,
Yeah.
look at it head on and how that's impacting the relationship. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the goodness of fit between you and your therapist is so important.
Mm-hmm.
What would
Mm-hmm.
you say your approach to therapy is?
Um, I mainly approach therapy. Okay, I don't want to say mainly because I don't want to put myself in a box, but I do utilize different approaches.
Mm-hmm.
But at the core, at the foundation of them all, is psychodynamic. And
Yeah.
that's how I was trained at Northwestern. It's a psychodynamic program, but also it speaks to me. It's not just that I was trained that way, it speaks to me so much. Psychodynamic framework really it places a lot of emphasis on relationships
Yeah.
and the past, and how those relationships inform how you connect to people today. So there's focus on the interpersonal, on the past, on patterns,
Mm-hmm.
even dreams, because dreams tell us so much. It's sort of like a bridge between our unconscious and our conscious. And so um another framework that I like to utilize is feminist. I'm very much so like the feminist. My favorite pillar of the feminist framework is that the personal is political.
Sure.
And so for me, when we're in therapy, I am focusing not just on the individual and what they're struggling with in terms of like diagnosis, symptoms they're presenting with, but also the systems that they exist in on a macro and micro level, and how are those systems impacting them. Are they oppressing them? Are they marginalized? What can we do? What resources do they need? What advocacy, what empowerment especially do my clients need? And so that's where I love the feminist theory. And I never sit there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to approach this client with a feminist framework. No, it just plays into who you are, right?
Absolutely.
These
Yeah.
things speak to me. I'm also like somewhat person-centered too, because I do approach clients with like this unconditional positive regard, meaning like, hey, whatever, even if you've done something that you feel ashamed of, that you feel terrible about, there's underlying reasons as to why that happened, and we'll explore them in a non-judgmental way. We all have our great sides and our shadow sides,
Yeah.
and we got to embrace every side. And that's how, like, it's about, for me, it's about using compassion to take all parts of you in and really just hold a space, a warm, kind space for them. So you can, like, another thing I'm not sure if you're picking up on is like diagnosis is, it's there, but it's not the centerpiece of
Yeah.
my work, if that makes sense. Like, we know what we're working with, but I'm not seeing my client as a diagnosis. No, I'm seeing my client as a human being who's here to work on symptoms, to work on presenting concerns. We put goals even in therapy, and we work towards achieving those goals, long-term and short-term. And they're usually centered in those symptoms and presenting concerns.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been nodding like this entire time because I think I agree with everything you've just said. So, I mean, I love psychodynamic. I work from like an interpersonal kind of
Yeah.
approach too, and paying attention to patterns and themes. And, you know, we're human beings, we're conditioned for the same kind of responses, and we find ourselves just kind of repeating the same patterns. And I think I see a lot of
Yeah.
clients who are just like, why do I keep finding myself in this
Yes.
position? And
Hmm.
that's where the fun, like exploring parts are.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Sometimes I feel like therapy is a puzzle and
Mm-hmm.
we're putting these pieces together and we're putting them in front of the client, and the client is having all those aha moments. And
Mm-hmm.
those are like some of the best moments ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I definitely agree. And diagnosis, sure, it's important in some cases, but I don't look at a client in that way either. And I think,
Right.
you
It's
know,
important, but it's not the only important thing.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Hmm.
Glad we're on the same page on that.
Yeah.
So with that, what clients would you say you work particularly well with, or you enjoy working with the most?
Um, okay, I'm gonna answer that question a little differently. Like,
Sure.
what clients approach me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I am not like the kind of therapist who's picky about who I work with.
Sure.
I started out that way, but then it never worked. And I'm so glad it didn't, because I got to see clients way outside of my comfort zone, and they've helped me grow in such phenomenal ways.
Yeah.
So the clients that I do attract are, um, I find myself attracting a lot of women of color,
Sure.
a lot of women of color who are either first gen or immigrants themselves, or refugees, or even second generation immigrants, and or kids of immigrants. And so I find myself working really well with this population of all like walks of the earth.
Sure.
Um, I find myself working with also men of color
Mhm.
um, in that way too. What else? I also find myself like working really well with clients who are coming in to work on like complex trauma, even acute trauma, clients who want to work on um, depression, other mental health disorders. But really, like if we're talking about traits, um, like things like perfectionism,
Sure.
high expectations for self, a lot of work around like interpersonal relationships,
Mhm.
attachment. What else? I am like zoning out, but that's just some of the things.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like, it's great to have, maybe a population that reaches out in particular, but it sounds like you also are very open-minded and really value the relationship. So that is the most important part. So regardless of the
Mhm.
background of this client, or maybe what they're presenting with, as long as that relationship is there and the bond between you as a therapist and the client, I think that's really the most important part too.
Yeah. It's funny that when you say that, what comes up for me is like when I started, um, I thought I was only going to attract mostly women of color. And for me, it was like, oh, because we look similar. But then I would work with clients who are also like first gen, second gen, or immigrants here who are of like white Caucasian backgrounds. And we've done phenomenal work. And it's not just women, it's men, even men who are they don't have anything to do with being an immigrant or
Sure.
anything like that. But um so this is where I'm like, I thought one thing, and then I was introduced to a diverse pool of clients, and that really helped challenge me in an awesome way, where I grew and I saw more potential in myself than I thought I had. So really the focus on, like, when you ask me that questions, clients who I work well with, I would say um, it's clients who are here to clients who are really motivated to
Yeah.
do the inner work,
Sure.
because inner work, it's not easy. It's a painful path to walk, and it's a long one, and it'll reveal a lot of layers to us that we're not at first, we're not going to be so happy seeing, or
Mhm.
they're not going to feel so great in the beginning. And so we get used to it eventually, and then we learn to embrace them. And that's the goal in therapy. But really, to answer that question, like the number one thing for me would be clients who are very highly motivated to do that inner work, meaning they have a strong drive and a strong reason and purpose to like come to therapy every week and sit there and unravel parts of them and learn to embrace and embrace that relationship we built together. That for me, I have been finding is the number one like indicator of success in therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah. That motivation and then the relationship between the two of you. And, this all ties back into what we were talking about earlier about how, in the process of becoming a therapist, I think we do realize how much we can learn from clients and how that maybe shifts our focus, and, we grow from them just as much as they maybe grow from us. And
Absolutely.
yeah, being open to that process too. I think there's a
Mhm.
benefit to not putting yourself in a box and
Mhm.
being available to, everyone that comes your way, obviously keeping in mind competencies. But yeah, I mean, that sounds great.
Mhm.
I think those are all of the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you want us to know about you?
Um, One thing I think there's a few things I forgot to add. One thing I forgot to add in terms of clients I work well with. Um, I work well with clients from the LGBTQ community as well.
Sure.
We've been doing some awesome, excuse me, some awesome work together with clients from that community. Um, I feel like I'm forgetting a lot, but yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Anything else you'd like to know about I'd like you to know about me? I don't know. I think that's I think I've said a lot.
Sure. Sure. What about you personally? Anything you want to share?
Mm. About myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think one of the things I bring to the table is being this like multicultural therapist is something, and being an immigrant and a woman of color, and that's something I take so much pride in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the parts that I love and how that informs who I am as a therapist is that it's given me so many different lenses.
Sure.
Um, and obviously my clients add to those lenses, but um, I've learned to really appreciate those perspectives that identity gives me. So um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for being so open and sharing with me everything. It's been great to get to know you better as a therapist, and we've interacted here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm happy that we could do this today, and
Yeah.
I'm excited for people to see this and to get to know you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mariel, for doing this.
Sure.
It
Well,
says your name is Sarah Silva, but
I
it's like, that's
know.
not your name.
Well, I will catch up with you later, but thank you
Yeah,
so much for taking the
thank
time.
you.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.